today my message is about the continuation of 10 new commandments for a world that works for everyone. It's also Martin Luther King weekend, and boy, was there ever someone who responded to the burning bush like Moses did. Dr. Martin saw the suffering of people as his to take on, not in a way of using force or violence, but in a way of simply stating the truth that all people are created equal and need to be treated as such. I have a great deal of respect for him, and I thought about him as I thought about the 10 Commandments and that idea of the modern burning bush. And you'll see your own. You'll come up with your own burning bushes as we talk about some of the things that we talk about in this series, 10 New Commandments. Last week I introduced the first one, thou shalt honor the waters of the earth. Now, the original 10 Commandments were a list of things not to do in order to live in a good, solid tribal culture. The intention of my 10 new commandments is to give you a list of suggested things to do in order to live in a global civilization, because that's where we are, aren't we? It's pretty hard to go back to the tribe when we're living in the day and age that we live in. And I use words like honor and bless because many of us have gotten away from the very idea that the earth itself is the sacred being of creation, that it is the body of God itself, and that it's not a commodity to be exploited, but rather something to be revered and taken care of and blessed and thanked, because that's where we come from. You know, the earth produced us, the earth feeds us. So I think we have a lot to learn from the indigenous people of our world who have kept that truth, and they've resisted getting involved in the making of the world into a commodity. And they've held this incredible wisdom about the sacred nature of the earth. We saw a wonderful film Friday night called Bridgewalkers that talked about that and the prophecies of some of the indigenous people about this very time that we live in now, which is, it's very interesting that it has been prophesied, and that there's a sense of hopefulness among many of the indigenous cultures that although what we see going on around us is not pleasant and it's not all that fun for us to have to deal with, that it's not the death knell that some people would have us believe it is. They tell us to fall in love with Mother Earth again, because what we love, we tend to take care of. I think there's nothing wiser than that I could speak today. We're in a time of great change. The global ecological crisis that's upon us, according to many, is also the defining spiritual crisis of humankind. I tend to think that's true. The defining spiritual crisis of humankind. And it's a crisis brought about by this mistaken notion that we are somehow separate from Mother Earth and separate from each other. Because the truth is, we are all one. Now, as a student of this philosophy, science of mind, that's the number one thing that we talk about, is that there's only one, that this illusion of separation is only that. It's an illusion. That the truth is that we are inextricably linked, not only physically, although we seem like separate beings in totally different skins, we share so much. We share the very atoms of our body, and the elements from which we're made have come from the stars and have been shared generation after generation. The very air that we breathe has been recycled over time again and again and again and again. We're connected in so many ways. We belong to the earth, and our future generations depend upon how we treat our planet right now. So I've found a lot of wonderful books as I've been doing this research, and one of them is called Blessed Unrest by Paul Hawken, and the subtitle is How the Largest Social Movement in History is Restoring Grace, Justice, and Beauty to the World. It's a book full of hope, and it's written by one of the foremost American conservationists. So the fact that this man can speak hope to us gives me great hope. And what he sees happening, I found this so inviting and alluring that I wanted to share it with you today. What he sees happening all over the world are thousands upon thousands of organizations springing up at a grassroots level. And some of them are no bigger than one or two people, all the way to something like the Audubon Society that stretches over, that's a huge organization. The Sierra Club, those are the big ones, but there are literally thousands of organizations and millions of people working on the planet for these burning bushes that we see all around us. All manner of activity going on, and he likens that to the activation of humanity's immune system. That springing up from the grassroots is a kind of response to threat, just as the human body goes through. When you think about the immune system of the body, at the core of immunity is the miracle of recovery and restoration. And there are times when our immune system is taken down. Stress, chemicals, infections, lack of sleep, and poor diets can overwhelm the immune system and send it into a tailspin. When that happens, old diseases resurface, while protection from new ones breaks down. Pathogens burgeon and seem to hold sway. And then there's a moment when death lurks at the threshold. At that point, given the odds and circumstances, something extraordinary can happen that really shouldn't happen. The immunological descent slows and halts. Our life hangs in the balance, and then we begin to heal. A comeback that rivals the climax of a Hollywood plot. How the disoriented and muddled immune system reverses its course and recovers is not well understood. Some would say it's a mystery. So Paul Hawken likens this same immunological response to what is happening among people as a response to preserve our species, to realign ourselves with the sacred nature of our planet, and to go on living for 7 generations down the future. I love that idea. Isn't that interesting? And it's a hopeful idea, isn't it? That just as the body has this mysterious, seemingly magical ability to heal itself, what if humankind has that same kind of mysterious ability? What if Mother Earth has that same kind of mysterious ability to heal? I love this idea. The philosophy that we teach here is a philosophy of oneness. And we work continually at healing the notion of separation, because we know that there is really only oneness going on. There is, that God is all there is. And if God is all there is, then there is only one. And that you and I and every living thing, every inanimate thing in the universe is a part of the one. That there is really only one. We teach that that when we heal the idea of separation, all becomes whole again to us. And my purpose for this series is not to talk about how bad things are in the world, not to make you feel guilty for all of the sins humanity has created, none of that. But really rather to re-inspire you, to live in a world of wholeness and oneness, and then watch it reveal before your very eyes. And hopefully to become conscious of some things about our planet that you may not already know, or to remind you if you've forgotten. So we believe in this philosophy that consciousness is the ground of all being, and that means that everything arises from consciousness itself, awareness itself. And we know that what we focus on increases, and that our thinking actually influences our reality. That's our work in the world, to focus on oneness, to remember the sacredness of planet Earth and all life, and to recognize the little t truth that is happening to the reality of our world, and yet consistently, constantly turn back to the capital T truth about our world, and that is wholeness, oneness, interconnectedness. We are a system. We belong to a world of systems. What we focus on increases. What we think about comes to pass. So doesn't it make sense then that our shifting our thinking about the world to one of wholeness and love and goodness is going to bring about more of that than focusing on all of the things that are wrong or in pain or wounded. So let's talk about my second new commandment. Thou shalt bless the air that you breathe. I love the picture, Steve. That's wonderful. Thou shalt bless the air that you breathe. Now, water is essential for us to live. We can live only about 3 days without water. But air, we could live about 3 minutes without air. It's important. We live in a thin layer of atmosphere around the world, around the globe, shielded by from the constant bombardment of the sun. It looks very delicate. It's blue and beautiful. And all of it is held in place by gravity. We breathe a delicious mixture primarily made up of nitrogen, oxygen, and carbon dioxide. But it was not always that way on this planet. In fact, 3 billion years ago, it was not a Garden of Eden. The sun was weaker than it is today, and the atmosphere had a red tinge to it. The oceans were olive green. Can you imagine? And comets and asteroids pounded the earth. If there had been any noses around, it would have smelled like rotten eggs. For the first 2 billion years of Earth's existence, the mottled volcano-packed planet had little oxygen, a fraction of the percent of the current levels. But about 2.3 billion years ago, there was a dramatic change. In what was perhaps the happiest moment in Earth's existence, photosynthesizing bacteria enjoying the sunlight began in an unusually productive feat for sunbathers to process it into oxygen. It was, so far as we know, a moment unlike any other in the universe. While Mars, just 60 million years older than the Earth, browned and reddened, Earth was furnished in greens and blues, and later in all the brilliant colors that decorate its plants and animals. The modern Earth owes about 85% of its oxygen to photoplankton, beginning with the cyanobacteria, blue-green algae that first quilted the planet those billions of years ago. It was an evolutionary singularity that transformed the entire planet. Life learning to interact with the sun. The New York Times article I just quoted called it the happiest moment in Earth's existence. But I tell you, there were some bacteria on Earth that weren't so happy about it. Because what happened, as more and more of this bacteria gave off oxygen, it poisoned the entire atmosphere. It was one of the biggest crises this world has ever seen. All other life on Earth died, went extinct because of the production of oxygen. Isn't that a fascinating fact? So we are here by the grace of bacteria. Wow. Wow. It makes me want to bless the air I breathe and just to say, thanks, little guys, thanks. I owe my existence to these oldest of ancestors, single-celled bacteria who taught phytoplankton how to do the same crazy dance with the sun and begin exchanging sunlight for oxygen. To me, that's magic. To me, that's sacred. That's mystery at its finest. So I spoke last week about the intelligence of our planet in creating systems that cross the globe and interconnect with each other. And as Antarctica as the most important place on Earth, and phytoplankton as the most important life on Earth. Well, and I left you over the Amazon forest, where, let me back up. So here we are. The phytoplankton, which is the place where the sunlight interacts with the minerals of the earth and feeds this enormous food engine in the ocean, which allows all life to flourish. So the end of my story last week was about this phytoplankton that had died and drifted to the bottom of the ocean, and then now 6,000 years later, in the Sahara Desert, which once was the largest lake on Earth, all of this phytoplankton with all of its nutrients held intact during certain times of the year, like clockwork, every day at noon, the wind kicks it up, blows it up into the atmosphere, blows it 3,000 miles across the Atlantic Ocean, where it mixes with the clouds above the Amazon forest. And it rains down fertilizer on the rainforest. From the satellites, they can see the instant greening of the forest. Well, there's yet another part to this story that I need to tell you because it goes on. And it's about air this time. It's about air. It's an amazing cycle of death and rebirth. Now, you may have heard the Amazon rainforest called the lungs of the earth. It's a major oxygen producer. The major green of the jungle produces about 1/5 of all of the oxygen on the planet. However, what scientists have now learned through the use of satellites is that there's a big twist here. All of the oxygen that the Amazon rainforest produces is reabsorbed by the rainforest. It's almost a closed system. None of the oxygen escapes. It goes right back into the forest. And yet, it serves us in a very vital way still in the production of oxygen. And the twist is this, that it rains about 250 days out of the year in the jungle. And what happens is the rain rains down all of those nutrients from the phytoplankton skeletons, falls onto the rainforest, and whatever's left over is carried away in the silt and the sediment. It carries away 2 million tons of sediment each day down through the river systems out into the ocean, where guess what? All of those nutrients feed the blooms of phytoplankton. So it's been a full circle now, a full circle. The phytoplankton then goes out into the ocean, covers 1/5 of it at sometimes a whole 1/5 of our ocean is covered by phytoplankton, producing 85% of the oxygen that we bring. Once again, thank you, little guys. Thank you. It's the most important thing on earth. So when you begin to see the beauty of the Earth's systems and the interconnectedness, do you feel yourself shifting? For me, this is deep spiritual work. Feel this shifting in the way that I interact, the way that I view my world. There's nothing separate. No one part of nature is separate from another. We are in a planetary system of cooperation, not competition. We are cared for by this planet we get to live on, and her systems are perfect and harmonious. In the words of Llewellyn Vaughan Lee in the introduction to a book called Spiritual Ecology, The Cry of the Earth, the world is not a problem to be solved. It's a living being to which we belong. The world is part of our own self, and we are a part of its suffering wholeness. Until we go to the root of our image of separateness, there can be no healing. And the deepest part of our separateness from creation lies in our forgetfulness of its sacred nature, which is also our sacred nature. So what is yours and mine to do? Well, you may find a burning bush that calls to you, some cause that you want to serve. Make sure that it's from a place of hope and of joy and of harmony, rather than that of pain and anguish at not being able to do enough. Has anybody else ever felt that? How can one person do enough? Well, I tell you, you can. You can, by shifting the way you view the world and your own life. So perhaps you'll be called to serve in some way, but it begins with who you are being. Last week, our spiritual practice was to honor the water every time we use it. And this week, I'm suggesting that you take time out of every day and breathe deeply and remember where your very breath comes from. It comes from the earth, from all of the systems put in place by this divine, brilliant intelligence that we live in and among. And give thanks for it. How deeply we are connected to the simplest living organism, the one-celled beings that provide us our oxygen. Now, will doing this change the planet? Yes, it will. Because as you and I change, one person at a time, the world must, by natural law, reflect back to us who we are being and becoming. Remember, it took 1 billion years to oxygenate the world. This may take some time. Hopefully not 1 billion years. But your work and my work today will lay down a future for the next 7 generations of people to come. I close with a quote from Diane Collins' book, Do You Quantum Think? Until we learn to think, look, and live from the intelligence of a world that is at its source a universe of whole systems, how can we expect to sustain peace and maintain economic viability for all? The sooner we begin living in the integrated experience of the world as a unified field, regard our consciousness as a unified field, and understand the physical earth and ourselves as aspects of the same living entity, the sooner we take a quantum leap in our reality to one of cooperation, respect, and appreciation, one of love, honor, and gratitude. Namaste. So let's go into prayer with that. As I just spend a moment getting in touch with a deep sense of gratitude welling up in me. gratitude, wonder, and delight at all of these things that I've discovered about our planet. Oh, how interconnected we are. We seem to be so apart from one another, and yet, what is it? A few millimeters of skin, a few feet of space. But just imagine for a moment that there is no barrier, that my skin and your skin is only a part of the whole, and that as we move the entire area, that the whole area moves and grows and swarms with a kind of interconnected energy. I'm going to call that God because I don't know what else to call it. This wholeness, this bigness, this sacredness, this intelligence that brought all of this to be. This is so far beyond the scope of what humans can understand. I can only just sit back in wonder and say thank you. Thank you to intelligence for creating this world. Thank you to Spirit for giving me the love in my heart for this world. And thank you for the hope that this chaos that there seems to be all around me at times is really a part of the system. It is a system in and of itself, and that in its breaking down, it is in a healing process. I support it. I love it. I let it be. I open myself even more deeply to awareness and wonder for this beautiful place we live. I dedicate my life to being and becoming a lover of the earth, a friend of the planet. And in that friendship, I open my arms to all living things, all inanimate things, all things, saying yes to my connection, my kinship. For we all did arrive from exploding stars that managed to find its way to Earth and become and become and become and become and become. So in this wonderful cycle of becoming, I give thanks. I am so grateful. I'm so very grateful.